What if I told you that one of history's greatest leaders, who confronted kings, parted seas, and spoke face-to-face with God, was ultimately forbidden from entering the Promised Land? This is the story of Moses, a man raised as a prince, called as a prophet, and remembered as a leader. His journey was marked by miraculous victories, personal failures, and a legacy that shaped the course of history. But what happened that prevented Moses from reaching the land he dedicated his life to leading his people toward? Stick around to uncover the fascinating twists in the story of Moses and the powerful lessons we can take from his life. Moses' story begins in one of the darkest times for the Israelites. Enslaved under Pharaoh's harsh rule, they faced the unimaginable, the mass killing of their newborn sons. In a desperate act of faith, Moses' mother, Jochebed, placed her baby in a basket and set him afloat on the Nile. Pharaoh's daughter discovered the child and adopted him, giving Moses the rare experience of growing up as an Egyptian prince while secretly knowing his Hebrew heritage. But that dual identity weighed heavily on him. As a young man, Moses witnessed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave and, in a fit of anger, killed the Egyptian. Fearful of the consequences, he fled to the land of Midian, where he lived as a shepherd, far removed from the life he once knew. But God had not forgotten Moses. One day, while tending sheep, Moses encountered a burning bush, a fire that did not consume the bush. From this miraculous sight, God spoke, calling Moses to return to Egypt and lead his people to freedom. Despite his initial reluctance, Moses accepted, equipped with God's promise, "I will be with you." Moses' calling reminds us that God often uses the unlikely, those who feel inadequate, to accomplish great things. Moses' doubts didn't disqualify him. They set the stage for God's power to shine through. Moses returned to Egypt, empowered by God, but still unsure of how Pharaoh would respond. Alongside his brother Aaron, he approached Pharaoh with a simple yet bold demand: "Let my people go." Pharaoh's heart, however, was hardened. In response, God unleashed a series of plagues to show his power. Each plague, frogs, locusts, hail, and even the death of livestock, targeted Egypt's gods and their way of life. The final and most devastating plague was the death of the firstborns, a judgment so severe that it finally compelled Pharaoh to release the Israelites. This event also marked the first Passover, a significant moment where the Israelites were instructed to mark their doorposts with lamb's blood, so the angel of death would pass over their homes. Passover became a symbol of God's salvation and faithfulness, a reminder of his power to redeem. The plagues were not just acts of judgment, they were a declaration that God is sovereign over all. For us, they show that freedom often requires faith, obedience, and sacrifice. Though freed from slavery, the Israelites' journey was far from over. Pursued by Pharaoh's army, they found themselves trapped between the Red Sea and their enemies. But God commanded Moses to stretch out his staff, and the sea miraculously parted, creating a path of escape. This incredible moment of deliverance cemented Moses' role as a leader, but it also set the stage for the challenges to come. In the wilderness, the Israelites faced hunger, thirst, and doubt. Despite their miraculous escape, they grumbled against Moses and God. Time and again, God provided manna from heaven, water from rocks, and guidance through a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. At Mount Sinai, Moses received the 10 Commandments, laws that would define Israel's relationship with God and each other. This covenant was a turning point, but it was also a reminder that obedience and faithfulness were essential for their journey. The wilderness tested both Moses and the Israelites. It's a reminder that faith often grows in seasons of uncertainty. Are we willing to trust God even when the path ahead is unclear? Despite his faithfulness, Moses was not without faults. One of the most heartbreaking moments in his story occurred when the Israelites demanded water in the wilderness. Instead of speaking to the rock as God commanded, Moses struck it in anger, taking credit for the miracle. This act of disobedience, though seemingly small, carried significant consequences. God told Moses that because of this, he would not lead the Israelites into the Promised Land. Instead, Moses climbed Mount Nebo, where God allowed him to see the land from a distance. Though Moses did not enter the promised land, he remained a faithful servant until the end, passing leadership to Joshua. Even great leaders like Moses are human. His story reminds us that God's plans are bigger than one individual, and sometimes the greatest acts of faith are trusting him, even when our own desires go unfulfilled. Moses' life was extraordinary, not because he was perfect, but because he trusted a perfect God. His legacy endures as a symbol of faith, leadership, and humility. The story of Moses challenges us to listen for God's calling, trust his provision, and remain faithful in every season of life. Thank you for joining us in exploring the life of Moses. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories from the Bible.